I'd like to thank the sponsors of this week's drasha, Dr. Pharaoh Block, to mark the yortzeit of his mother on the 21st of Teves, Gittel Bas Velvel Noach Halevi, Gertrude Block, Zichron Levracha, Meir Neshama Heaven Aliyah, and also Naomi and Ori Carmel sponsoring as a merit for a complete refuah shlema for Ephraim Avraham ben Rachel. May she have a refuah shlema. I think that there have been many, many difficulties in this period of COVID, but one of the greatest frustrations that I hear from people in various conversations, and I of course feel the frustration myself as well, is we are aware of so many people with needs, so many people in isolation. I don't want to belabor the point. I'm sure as you're hearing this, you can draw up your own pictures in your mind. Nobody needs any help of thinking of those situations by this point. And one of the greatest frustrations is I can't even do anything to help. You know, in normal times, we would visit the person, but it's not safe for us to visit the person. In normal times, we would do this for them, we would do that for them. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over these months that start off with a really wonderful idea of something to do for someone. And then it's very clear as the conversation continues or we ask an advisor that it doesn't make sense to do it, that it might be helpful in one way, but it's detrimental in another way. And it's very, very painful. And it's very frustrating that besides, again, first and foremost, the terrible losses that have occurred over these months, the terrible illness that has occurred over these months, the terrible isolation, the terrible financial difficulty, so many difficult things, somewhere on that list, before, after, in the middle, whatever, somewhere on that list is the terrible feeling of inadequacy, that so many of us have. I really wish I could help. Why can't I do anything to help a person? How many people who have been so hospitable for years feel, yes, there are many of us who feel lonely because we're sitting alone at our table or with very few others at our table. But others don't necessarily feel lonely. They just feel that there's this terrible void at their table. There are so many people who they've enjoyed having, and they feel they could help people by having them over, and it's not an option. So many of us feel so lacking in this regard. Why am I unable to do anything to help anyone else? And what I'd like to reflect on for a few minutes, and I appreciate your time, I need to go through three things that none of them are terribly novel answers to this question, but if ever this is discussed, these three things must be said. And then I'd like to spend a little bit of time on a fourth option that for some is self-evident and for others might be a little bit out of left field. So the first thing is, if a person wants to be thoughtful and considerate and helpful to other people in these very, very difficult times, I have a very basic answer that's very not exciting. Wear a mask. Wear a mask and social distance. The terrible things, I mean, obviously, we can't understand the ways of God, but the terrible things on a level that we can relate to in the realm of science, and that's our hishtadlus, that's our basic effort, on some level, it could be slowed down if all of us are more diligent. So even if a person, for whatever reason, isn't concerned for their own health or for their own family's health, it could very well be that diligence about this will help other people. One thing. And imagine the feeling of lacking in one's soul. That why can't I do chesed to other people, for other people like I'm used to doing? Imagine if every time a person put on a mask or made sure to distance themselves, they had in mind, I'm doing this because I care about other people. Think of what we could do for our souls in that way, our own feelings. Number one. Number two, with Hashem's help, we should have an option of a vaccine in our community very soon. Again, how soon is very soon, who knows? But, for all the months that we've been talking about, at some point, God willing, we'll have an option for a vaccine. Again, regardless of if one is concerned for their own health, and candidly, I think we should be concerned for our own health, regardless of our age. But regardless of that, there are so many people who indirectly are helped. There are people who will be able to come back into society if enough of us take the vaccine. There are people in our community who either aren't able to take the vaccine medically, based on advice from the medical establishment because of their unique condition, or even if they can take the vaccine, it's far from clear how much the vaccine can actually help them. And those people are waiting for the rest of us. Because if a high enough percentage, the herd immunity, if a high enough percentage of people in the world, in the country, in the region, take the vaccine, that is a bill of freedom for others who are not immune through taking the vaccine. So again, not exciting, but if you really want to say, what can I do to help another person? God willing, when you have that option, do it. That's number two. Number three, maybe a little bit more feel good, but not so novel. Pick up a phone, my friends. Pick up a phone. There are two benefits to picking up the phone. One benefit to picking up the phone is even if the person who you're calling is well connected and has various other people they're connected to in this world, you're strengthening your connection to that person in that moment. You're being more of a connected human being. The terrible feelings of isolation are a little bit less in your own life and in this other person's life. And all the more so, sit and think, who do we know who probably doesn't have a lot of interaction with people right now? Who do we know who would feel so good to pick up a phone and see, hear that it's another human being who actually is interested in them, not trying to sell them something? And I want to make a very specific point, and perhaps others will disagree. My personal feeling is, and in private conversation, many have confirmed this, people don't really want to feel like a chesed case. Listen, it's nice if anybody calls, but the ideal person to call is not a person who has no idea who you are and they just got your name on a list and you must need a phone call, so I called you. How long is that conversation going to be for? And how is the person going to feel? The ideal person to call is someone who knows the other person. Doesn't have to be their closest friend. It could be someone who remembers them from down the row in Shul. I miss seeing you Shabbos morning. I just wanted to say hello. Just those moments. And maybe, just maybe, if the person seems happy enough that you called, go somewhere with it. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. Did you always live in this area? What do you do for a living? What did you do for a living? Go with it. Schmooze with them. Is it all right if I call you in another week or two just to reconnect? Yes, the conventional manners by which we do chesed, so many of those doors are currently closed. Tragically. But they're not all closed. And even if we're not used to connecting in that way, let's do it. But dafka, specifically, not as a shul program, on a grassroots level, let each person call people who they know and reach out to them. It's much more real, and I think it's much more meaningful to the recipient. And now I want to go on to mysterious number 4. But for number 4, I would like to reflect for a few moments on a very famous pasuk in this week's Parsha. Yaakov Avinu asks of one basic thing from his son Yosef, the viceroy of Egypt. Do for me chesed ve'emes. Do for me kindness and truth. Al nasik pareni b'mitzroyim. Please don't bury me in Egypt. Please see to it that I'm buried in the land of Israel. Of course, he's asking that he should be buried in Maras HaMachpelah, along with the general area of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. I want to think about this for a few moments. Yaakov Avinu, we're told in the Medrash that the famine didn't last. The famine in Egypt and in the general region, or famine in Egypt, didn't last for the number of years that were conveyed through Yosef to Paro based on Paro's dream. Because when Yaakov came to Egypt, Yaakov brought blessing with him. You know, it's a very interesting thing. The brothers came back to the land of Israel, after Yosef revealed himself to them. And they came and they said to Yaakov that our brother Yosef says we should all go down to the land of Mitzrayim. And Yaakov didn't want to go. Yaakov's feeling was that he could just stay in the land of Israel and he'd make do. And God would take care of him and God would make it work. Yaakov brought blessing with him to Egypt. And Yaakov was a person, he had been through a tremendous amount in his life. And God saw him through. And Yaakov was a person who had experienced great things. And he had reason to believe that by the goodness of God and by the merits of his own piety, good things would happen for him. And here's Yaakov, and he has one basic request of Yosef. Because once he's gone, once he's died, who's going to help him? He's a dead body. He can't take care of himself anymore. Of course, Hashem helps all of us, but he can't even act. As a dead body, for all that Yaakov went through in his life, the bottom line is that's the one moment where he desperately needs someone else's assistance. And he says to Yosef, it's a chesed, and so much is made of the famous drasha, chesed shalemes, and that when people look after the needs of the dead, it's the true kindness because they can't pay you back. We know that. It's a very famous idea, a very powerful idea. But even without that, just think about it. On a basic level, this remarkable patriarch of this distinguished family who brings blessing with him is imploring his son, see to it that I'm buried where I want to be buried, because without your help, what will be with me? For everything that he had, he was asking his son for chesed, kindness, because if you don't do it, what will be? And the truth is, every time a person passes away, before COVID, during COVID, and God willing after COVID, every time a person passes away, if they are to have a halachic burial, they need people to do for them. They need a tahara. And the person could be from the most prominent individual, from the most wealthy individual, from the most well-known communal individual. Doesn't matter. In the end of the day, they're dead. Forgive me. And they can't do it anymore. And they need someone to take care of them. And that's what it is to be part of a Chevra Kadisha. And that's what it is to involve oneself in the beautiful mitzvah of a tahara. those who are regulars in the shul and certainly in the 45 million remember, I suppose, that for a number of years now we've joined the national organization of Rabbi Zone's organization based in New York of discussing some aspect of end of life on this parsha. And it wasn't so long ago that we spoke about taharas. But I think specifically in this time of COVID, it's very meaningful. You know, forgive me, I hope I don't cause anyone any pain. There are people over these months in Klal Yisrael who have passed away and been buried, and it hasn't been feasible for them to have a tahara. In some unique circumstances, depending on the state of the body, it could be medically dangerous for them to have a tahara for the chevra. It could be dangerous for the chevra. It could be, we've certainly read in different places in the world, lo aleinu, so many people have died over such a small time. It's not even feasible for taharas to be done. Could you imagine telling a family, you know, we have the protective equipment, we have the means of doing a tahara for your loved one, but we just don't have people for it. We're terribly sorry. We have the time to do it. We have the place to do it. We have the setup to make it safe to do, but we just don't have anybody to do it. Should you imagine the pain? Should you imagine the pain of those words? And we're zocha, we have the merit, and as a community, we owe so much gratitude to the devoted men and women of our chevra kedishas, the men's chevra, the women's chevra, who have been doing taharas throughout this period. What an amazing chesed. I have definitely had conversations with families of people near death, and it's, of course, we know people want to know what's going to be, how does a funeral work, in normal times people have a lot of questions. I can't tell you how many times people ask, are there people doing taharas today? Ashreinu, how fortunate we are and how great the merit is for every member of the chevra who's still doing taharas now. It's an amazing thing. So just think, if a person participates in a tahara, they are standing up and making sure that that person who was physically left no longer living, and they just need to be taken care of in these last steps before they're physically put away, buried under the ground, and then they can go in peace to another realm. A person who stands up to participate, they're actively saying, I'm going to do for you. I'm going to take care of you. As we said, a chesed shel emes, a true kindness, because you're not going to get anything back from it from the person. Person can't do for you anymore. So we can't have this one over for Shabbos lunch, and we can't visit that one in the hospital, and we can't go for a walk maybe with that one. Everything's different. Do you feel a void? You know what you can do? You can participate in the Chevra Kedisha. And now I want to just highlight something as is correct and understandable, and for many, many in our community, extremely advisable. Many in our community who would normally participate in the Chevra Kedisha aren't exposing themselves to possible COVID exposures in general, are staying at home all the time, as is advised by their doctors, whether it be because of specific conditions, whether it be because of age-related matters. And as we've said many times before, that's a decision that makes a tremendous amount of sense. To be very candid, it could be that there should be more people in the community making that decision. That's not. I'm not thinking of specific individuals when I say that, but it's a very real point, and it's a very important point. But if you have a person who is doing X and is doing Y and is doing Z, and is being thoughtful about it, of course, and only doing it, and only with masks and only with social distancing and so on and so forth, please realize that the care and concern that the leadership of the Chevra have put into ensuring doing whatever is appropriate to minimize the risk for all those who participate in the Chevra. Again, if a person isn't going anywhere, I don't know that the Chevra Kadisha makes sense. But if a person is doing this and doing that, the Chevra Kadisha can also be on that list. And it's an opportunity to really do for people a tremendous chesed at a time that so many of us aren't able to do the normal kindnesses that we like to do. It's one thing. B, it happens to be a time that there are others who would normally be doing taharas, who, based on medical factors, are not doing taharas right now, and it makes sense that they're not doing taharas. So the need is actually even greater. And C, I want to make one more point, which is we're all dealing with added stress in our lives. All of us. Whether a person is alone, whether a person, Kanai has a large family, we all are dealing with added stress. So think for a moment of the very devoted members of the Chevra who are dropping everything to take care of someone, to do a tahara for them. And not only are they dropping everything to do it, they're doing it more times in a week or in a month than they normally do. Because there are others who aren't participating right now. So these people are doing an amazing mitzvah, but they're already dealing with greater stress in their lives than they normally are. And then the Chevra is an amazing mitzvah to participate in, but we all have our thresholds. So not only if a person participates in taharas, are they giving themselves a very meaningful chesed in which to participate. And not only are they pitching in for a chesed that is actually would benefit from more volunteers, but they're helping other very devoted volunteers deal with their own COVID-related challenges because they will be home more. They will have more time to rest. They will have more time to have to think or sleep or whatever it is. Be with family, whatever. We've said it before. Humbly, I would strongly urge every person, again, assuming that it's medically wise and appropriate at this juncture for a person, but a person who is able to do it, even if you've never participated before, even if you think you'll be terrified, try it at least once. It could be you'll surprise yourself. It could be that you are able to do it. It could be that you're sort of able to do it, and then you'll come a second time, a third time, so on and so forth. But even if you just go once, you tried. I on behalf of the community, I of course want to express my extreme gratitude to every single woman and man in this community who participates in the Chevra in general, but particularly during these times. I want to give a very special thank you to both Devorah and Dean Grayson. They head the women's and men's divisions of the Chevra, respectively. I'm sure if anyone would like to try it, wants to understand a little bit better what precautionary measures the Chevra takes so that they feel more comfortable, I'm sure Dean or Devorah would be very happy to speak with you. If you'd like to be connected to another person, I'm sure they could help you, or perhaps I could help you. I want to give all of us a bracha. May we have the merit, with Hashem's help, that we should get back to looking out for each other in the ways that we normally try to, in the ways that we normally like to. And we should continue to grow together, and our souls should continue to be nourished by the wonderful opportunities to reach out to each other. But I really, really would urge anyone who even to just try once to participate in this remarkably important mitzvah. The great Yaakov Avinu desperately needed his son's help. Every person who passes needs Baalei Chesed to step up for them. How fortunate we are that we have a community within our community, so many special Baalei Chesed, but how wonderful it would be to have even more. Have a good Shabbos and Tizkul Mitzvos.